Can I tell you that
Yeah.
story about Bill Evans?
Yeah.
In 1978, when I was 19 years old or something, 18, 19, I went to see Bill Evans in a little club in Montreal. He died maybe a year or two later. So that was towards the end of his life. And there was a little jazz club above a restaurant called Rising Sun in Montreal. Very small. So a friend brought me, and he was taking photographs of jazz musicians that came to Montreal at the Rising Sun. That was his hobby. He would take pictures of jazz musicians. So we went and we listened to Bill Evans, and he has a trio, and I'm listening, and I'm thinking, okay, it's fine. There's only maybe 20 people in the room. 25 maximum. It was a very small room, and nobody was listening to Bill Evans at that time. You know, he was kind of forgotten. Jazz music became more popular in the mid-80s, but in the 70s it was all about Weather Report, or this kind of jazz music, Pat Metheny and Pastorius, Jaco Pastorius, more like fusion. But the classical jazz, if we can call it classical jazz, like Bill Evans, was not very popular. So I'm listening, and I was finding this nice, but a little bit sleepy. And I remember during the break, we went upstairs because they had the kind of like relax room for the musicians on the one level up, and we went there. And Bill Evans was there with the drummer and the bass player, and he had big Coke bottle glasses that were kind of like dark. And he had a jacket that looked like they used the curtains to make his jacket. It was kind of a strange jacket. They were discussing crock pot recipe, which is kind of like a hot pot. And they were discussing that he had made this kind of stew and what he put in it. That was Bill Evans. He was right there in front of me discussing a recipe that he made cooking. Today, if I was to see Bill Evans in person, I would be speechless. But at that time, it was just an ordinary thing, if one can believe that.
Recently, we had the MoFi scandal where they were quite transparent about
This is a very good topic.
using digital process in the middle of remastering. What's your opinion?
Well, not much. I don't think much of that. You can see my reaction. The problem in today's world with vinyl, MoFi is only an example. 90% of the vinyls that are being sold to audiophiles today, to the public, consumers I should say, are made by, let's say, Sony company. And they're basically PCM files, digital files, put to vinyl. It's basically a transfer that was made in the 80s, early 80s, and it's basically a CD on vinyl. And it's an early 80s CD on vinyl, which when digital was really not as good as it is today. This is horrible because people buy these $20, more or less, $15 records. They're building a vinyl collection, but they're just getting the vinyl. They're not getting the music. They're getting what's on the music as a CD. And this is really sad because I think that the young audiophile is building a record collection, and you don't want to cheat this person. You want this person to be in the audio interest for a long time. Now, if they have CDs on vinyl, what is the advantage? It's very small advantage. There's no advantage. That's not the same as a modern digital recording that's being put to vinyl, that's being mastered for vinyl properly. We're talking about taking a CD and directly putting it to vinyl. Of something that was recorded analog-wise in the first place. So you can buy kind of blue in mono, but it's digitized and put on vinyl. It's a disaster, right? So in order to get a good vinyl record, you have to get analog production and ORG, Ying Tan in Singapore, or you have to get the Speaker's Corner or other ones, Analog Phonic. You have to get these records that are more like $40, but that's only a small percentage of the records being sold. Now, the MoFi issue is that these records are like, let's say $40, $50, $60, and once they issue them, then they go up on eBay to, let's say, $300 a record, and you find out that they've been digitized, processed, and put back to analog. And this is a little bit wrong because that's not the impression that people that were buying were having. The idea is never that a product should be illegal, but a product should say what it is.
It should be transparent.
It should be transparent. If it pretends to be something else than it is, then that's a lie. It's dishonest.
Quite interesting though, because a lot of people have felt that and still feels that MoFi DSC remastered LP sounds really good.
To me, I've never liked the sound of the MoFi. So I have some MoFi that I bought that I didn't even open because I bought the record. I thought it would be good, like Kind of Blue, for instance. And I listened to the Kind of Blue MoFi, and there's an analog production reissue of Kind of Blue that's much better. And I had a previous reissue from the 70s that was better than the MoFi. So to me, it was always like it sounds synthetic. It sounds somewhat processed. And so I always felt somewhere there was something not quite working.
It's not because this scandal happened?
No, that was way before. And if you would have asked me a year ago what I thought of MoFi, I would have said, whatever, so-so, not my cup of tea. So the result is that I may have only like 15 MoFi records in my collection, while I have maybe 100 or 200 analog productions or classic records. I've never been a big chaser. But then when Kind of Blue comes out and there's big buzz about the record, then I figure, okay, we'll give it a try. I've never been impressed with anything coming out of MoFi. Like on Kind of Blue, the bass is very sloppy, kind of reverb-like, not tight. There's something not happening. Well, if you come to Canada, I'll play you the MoFi version of Kind of Blue and the new analog production of Kind of Blue, and the analog production is way superior. They don't use any digital process. What I found with MoFi is that they were going in digital format, probably because they were enhancing the music. They were creating more contrast, more fireworks, more sparkling. But in the end, to me, it never sounded natural. So as I was saying before, you can never put more music to the music.
I understand. Kronos Discovery turntables use Kuvala Osana cables. So
That's right.
How did the relationship with Mr. Joe Kuvala start out?
Well, Joe is a very good friend of mine. When I started doing shows in the US, often his cables were part of the room. And so we got to know each other a little bit. I got to know him better because we shared the same distributor, GTT Audio, Bill Parrish in the US. At some point, Joe wanted a Kronos Pro. I wanted Kuvala Sauce cables, and so we did a trade, and I used to play around with cables a little bit. Maybe this cable would be better between the preamp and the amplifier, and maybe that cable would be better for the turntable, and I would play around with this. But when I got his cables in my system, and they were all his cables, I said, that's it. I don't ever want to put another cable in my system because everything was, as far as I was concerned with cables, was right, and I didn't feel the need to tune everything, anything with cables. Again, cables are a filter. What you want is the least amount of filtering possible. So if you're fixing a problem in the source with a cable, there's a problem. You should be fixing the problem of the source in the source, not using a cable later on. So this is just my opinion. Anyways, having his cables, at some point we discussed the possibility of making an umbilical cord between the power supply to the SCPS to the SCPS-1, and we did, and it was great improvement. And when I was working on the Discovery, I told Joe, I said, look, I don't think this should be an optional product for the consumer. I think we should supply them with Kuvala Sosna right from the start. It happened kind of accidentally, but I'm really glad it did because I really like the product.
So you talked about Joe, and who are your best friends? Can you introduce them?
You mean in the industry?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Lee, for once. So I've often said that the audio industry is not an industry where it's easy to make money, but it's very easy to make friends. Because when we talk about music, we talk about our passion of music, our passion for sound engineering, for sound reproduction. Music is a great reassembler of people. It's a really great way to build bridges between people, different cultures, different ages. I think it's just wonderful for that. We have great friends all over the world, people who we've met along the way, some manufacturers, some audiophiles, some who own our products, some who don't own our products. I mean, it's fine as long as we share the love of music. It's funny, you know, we're talking right now about all these things, and I don't think you're a Korean, I'm a Canadian. I don't know your political point of views. I don't need to, right? It's not important. And we're just very happy to be sharing this love together of music. So Bill Parrish of GTT is a really great friend. I mean, beyond the business part, we're really good friends. Voodoo Kong of Kong Audio is a fantastic friend of mine. We have a lot of fun together when I'm in Vietnam. You know, we just enjoy life. We talk about life.
How is the industry in Vietnam? I mean, audio industry.
Oh, it's crazy. Vietnamese people, first of all, have a culture of liking music. They were under French rule a long time, and you know, they were very open to Western world. So they have a love of music, but they were separated from the rest of the free world.
Right.
And they didn't buy so many audio systems because they didn't have that kind of money and they didn't have the openness to bring the product in. But today, Vietnam is a fast developing country, and there's some people who are making a lot of money in that environment. They've never owned big audio systems on average, so they're hungry to discover this. In a place mature as South Korea, or Europe or the United States, people have had audio systems for a while, so they're a little less excited about, you know, it's not like a new toy for them.
All right.
It's something, I mean...
Well, that's definitely a new toy though.
Well, yeah. You know, it's funny, we introduced this about 1.5 years ago, and I had my unit for a little over a year before that because I was doing tests on it. And it's still a new toy to me every time I play it. It's always a marvel and something I can discover more music from.
Do you tinker around a lot with your system?
Well, the tone arms was a bit of tinkering. I mean, now we've been shipping them since Munich, so that is since May. So in the last about 5 months, in the last 5 months, we've updated 75 owners of the previous tone arms to this. But as a rule of fact, what I like to do is dive in deeper into my record collection and not so much tinker with the system. I like the system to be stable. What I've been having a lot of fun doing lately is cleaning my records with new ultrasonic machine that's even better than the one I had before. I don't want to name names. I've really had a great time doing that, and really with the new tone arm, I've got to listen again to 4,000 records to find out what was really there that I couldn't hear before. So I got a couple of years ahead of me. But spending time with the record collection is really the big joy in all of this.